This clinical definition undersells what it actually feels like. The dissonance is not abstract. It is physical and pressing. Researchers measuring physiological responses during dissonance have found elevated cortisol, increased heart rate, and activation of the same neural regions involved in physical pain. The brain treats internal contradiction as a real threat. And like any threat, it deploys immediate defense mechanisms. Not to resolve that contradiction honestly, but to eliminate that discomfort with the least possible effort. This is where it becomes important to understand the three main ways people resolve dissonance, because each reveals something different about how we protect our self-image. The first is to change the behavior, to actually align your actions with your beliefs. This is the healthiest resolution and also by far the rarest. The second is to change the belief, to convince yourself that the contradictory behavior was justified given the circumstances. The third is to add new cognitions, to pile additional beliefs on top of the conflict until the contradiction is buried under enough justification that it stops producing discomfort. Most people, most of the time, use the second and third routes. Not because they are weak or dishonest, but because changing a behavior is hard, while changing a story about a behavior is effortless and immediate. Consider what this looks like in ordinary life. A person who smokes and knows it is dangerous does not typically experience constant anguish. Instead, the mind resolves the dissonance. Stress justifies it. Social bonding around smoking makes it feel connected to identity. The belief that one could quit at any time reframes it as a choice rather than a compulsion. Or the statistical risk is minimized with the logic that someone else will be the one who gets sick. None of these thoughts are. There's a specific kind of discomfort most people feel, but almost nobody has a name for. It is not guilt exactly, and it is not regret. It is something more immediate, a low hum of psychological tension that appears in the gap between who you believe you are and what you just did. You consider yourself an honest person, and then you lie to make something easier. You know exactly why a relationship is unhealthy, and you stay in it anyway. You understand that a habit is damaging you, and you continue it. And then, almost instantly, your mind begins to work, not to change the behavior, but to explain it, to justify it, to make the contradiction disappear. Leon Festinger, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, gave this process its name in 1957, cognitive dissonance. And the mechanism he uncovered is not a personality flaw. It is one of the most powerful and least understood forces in all of human behavior. Festinger developed the theory after studying a doomsday cult. Members believed the world would end on a specific date. They had quit jobs, ended relationships, and built their identities around this belief. When the predicted date passed without incident, Festinger expected them to feel devastated and abandon the belief. Instead, something stranger happened. Most became more committed than before. They told themselves the world had been saved because of their faith, and they began recruiting new members with renewed energy. The failed prophecy had not dissolved the belief. It had intensified it. Festinger realized he was looking at something fundamental about how minds handle contradiction. When reality collides with a deeply held belief, the belief does not automatically lose. The mind fights back. Cognitive dissonance is the psychological discomfort that arises from holding two contradictory beliefs or from acting in a way that conflicts with a held belief. But fully conscious decisions, they are automatic psychological operations the mind performs to close the gap between behavior and belief. And they are so fluent and rapid that they feel like genuine reasoning. They feel like the truth. This is what makes cognitive dissonance genuinely dangerous rather than merely uncomfortable. The resolution mechanism is invisible to the person using it. When you justify a bad decision, you do not experience yourself as justifying it. You experience yourself as arriving at a reasonable conclusion. The internal machinery protecting your self-image presents its output as objective thought. This is why people who do harmful things almost universally believe they had good reasons. Not all of them are lying. Many are entirely sincere. The mechanism has already done its work before awareness has a chance to intervene. Festinger and his colleague James Carl Smith demonstrated this with a now-famous experiment. Participants completed an extremely boring task, moving spools on a pegboard for an hour. Afterward, they were asked to lie to the next participant, telling them the task had been interesting. Some were paid $20 to deliver the lie. Others were paid only $1. The researchers then asked both groups how much they had actually enjoyed the task. The people paid $20 continued to rate it as boring, but those paid only $1 rated it as significantly more enjoyable. Paid too little to justify the lie externally, their minds resolved the dissonance internally by actually changing their perception of the experience. They had convinced themselves they enjoyed something they had not. The gap between the lie and their self-image was closed not by admitting the lie, but by altering the memory of the experience itself. What this experiment revealed is that dissonance resolution does not just rationalize future behavior. It can retroactively rewrite past experience. The mind edits what has already happened to make the story coherent. This is one reason people who have made serious mistakes often remember events in ways that cast themselves more favorably than evidence suggests. It is not always deliberate distortion. It is often the dissonance mechanism doing exactly what it evolved to do, keeping the self-image intact. Understanding cognitive dissonance matters precisely because the process is automatic. You cannot decide not to experience it, and you cannot resolve it honestly by will alone. What you can do is learn to recognize its signature, that subtle urgency to explain, justify, or reframe immediately after a contradiction emerges, and slow down before the resolution completes itself. The discomfort you feel in that moment is information. It is telling you that two things in your belief system are in conflict. Allowing that tension to exist long enough to examine it, rather than immediately resolving it through the nearest available justification, is one of the most demanding cognitive skills a person can develop. But it is also one of the most consequential, because the version of yourself that can tolerate that tension without rushing to close, it is the version that actually learns and actually changes. Subscribe to keep going deeper. Every week, this channel goes one level further into the psychology, shaping how you think, decide, and see yourself.